Sometimes the world ignores the quietest hands that hold the greatest power. This is the story of a black nurse who turned disbelief into a miracle. Alisha Moore walked quickly through the bright hospital corridor, her sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. It was nearly midnight, but the ward still pulsed with activity. Machines beeped, nurses hurried with charts, and doctors issued orders with practiced authority. Alisha moved among them quietly, her ID badge swinging against her chest, unnoticed like a shadow in a room full of light. At 28, she had already spent 5 years in this hospital. Her skin was the shade of deep mahogany, her hair neatly tied back under her cap, and her eyes carried the mixture of exhaustion and quiet determination that every nurse eventually learned to wear. Patients sometimes smiled at her, sometimes thanked her, but most people forgot her name the moment she stepped out of the room. Alisha had grown used to it. She was the daughter of a janitor who had worked endless nights cleaning office buildings, and a father who had walked out when she was 9. Life had never handed her recognition easily. She learned early that people like her had to fight harder just to be seen. Nursing, she believed, was her way of fighting back, not with fists, but with compassion, not with anger, but with healing. Yet inside this hospital, she was invisible. In team meetings, when she tried to suggest something, her voice was often brushed aside. Senior doctors barely glanced at her. Sometimes she noticed her ideas later repeated by others, suddenly praised as brilliant. She swallowed her pride, not because she lacked courage, but because she had learned survival required patience. But invisibility weighed heavily on her heart. She remembered the nights her mother came home in a faded uniform, hands rough from scrubbing floors, saying, "Baby, no matter what the world tells you, you are worthy. Do not let them crush your light." Alisha carried that light even when no one noticed. She was the one who held the trembling hands of patients in pain. She was the one who whispered words of comfort in the ears of the dying. She was the one who cleaned wounds long after the doctors had left the room. Still, recognition never came. That night, as she checked on patients, she felt the same quiet ache inside her chest. She did not know that within days, her life would collide with a moment so powerful, so unexpected, that the world could no longer ignore her. The rain fell hard against the Manhattan streets, blurring the lights of the city. Cars moved like restless animals, horns echoing through the storm. At exactly 7:45 p.m., a black SUV sped too, quickly across a slippery road and slammed violently in two. The side of a delivery truck, the sound was like thunder. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. Inside the SUV was Emily Carter, the 22-year-old daughter of millionaire Richard Carter. She had just left a charity gala where she had spoken about youth empowerment. Emily was known for her sharp mind and soft heart. She had funded school projects, visited orphanages, and dreamed of building programs for underprivileged kids. But now she lay slumped against the seat, blood trickling down her forehead, her chest rising shallowly. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics worked frantically, securing her neck, applying pressure to her wounds. Rain soaked through their uniforms as they carried her into the flashing vehicle. The sirens wailed through the storm, racing her to St. George's Hospital. Richard Carter got the call as he was leaving a late business dinner. His world shattered in seconds. His only daughter, his pride, was on the edge of life and death. He rushed to the hospital, his expensive suit drenched by the rain as he stormed inside, demanding answers. "Where is she? What are you doing to save her?" he shouted. Doctors rushed Emily into the emergency unit. A ventilator was quickly attached. Her body refused to respond, her pulse fading dangerously. Senior doctors gathered around, their faces tight with focus. They performed scans, ordered medications, adjusted machines. Every effort was made. Alisha Moore stood in the corner of the room, silently watching. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted Emily's foreline. But her heart was steady. She looked at the young woman lying unconscious, tubes and wires covering her fragile frame. Richard Carter pushed through the crowd, his voice trembling with fury and fear. "I want the best specialists here, now. Do whatever it takes. I will pay anything. But do not let my daughter die." The hospital responded to his command. Overnight, top surgeons were called. Specialists flew in from other cities. The staff moved like soldiers under orders, all focused on saving Emily Carter. But despite the noise, despite the power and wealth surrounding her, Emily's body did not improve. Whispers filled the hospital corridors. Some said she would not survive the week. Others said even if she did, she would never wake up. Richard Carter refused to listen. He poured money, influence, and desperation into the fight, but nothing seemed to work. And in those quiet hours, when the specialists rested and the senior doctors stepped out, it was Alisha who remained by Emily's side. She cleaned her wounds. She adjusted her ventilator. She whispered softly into the silence, as if her words could travel through the machines and reach Emily's soul. "You are stronger than they think," Alisha said quietly. "Do not give up. I will not give up on you." In that moment, she felt a strange connection. Both of them, despite living worlds apart, knew what it meant to fight battles where others had already counted them out. Neither of them knew, but this was only the beginning. 3 days passed, and Emily's condition grew more fragile with every hour. Her father, Richard Carter, had taken over an office in the hospital, using it as his command center. Specialists came and went. Charts covered the walls. Every conference room became a battlefield of medical arguments. Dr. Stephen Harris, the hospital's most respected physician, led the discussions. He was confident, articulate, and carried the kind of authority that made people nod before they even understood his point. Richard trusted him completely. But despite all the brilliance, Emily's ventilator readings remained grim. Her oxygen levels dipped dangerously at times, and her heart struggled to keep rhythm. Alisha, though not part of the senior staff, was allowed to attend the meetings to stay informed. She sat at the end of the long table, listening as doctors debated complex treatment options. She studied the charts carefully, her eyes narrowing when she noticed something unusual in the test results. Her mind raced back to her training days in Harlem. She had seen something similar in a patient with a rare respiratory collapse, a condition often misdiagnosed because it mimicked more common issues. Emily's test results matched those symptoms almost perfectly. Her chest tightened with urgency. She raised her hand timidly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I think there's a chance." Emily's body isn't responding because of an underlying condition we might have overlooked. The pattern in her oxygen saturation, and Dr. Harris cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Nurse Moore, please. These are advanced medical discussions. You're here to observe, not to speculate." The room went silent. A few doctors exchanged awkward glances. Richard Carter barely glanced at her. Alisha felt her cheeks flush with heat. She wanted to fight back, to argue, to explain that she had seen this before. But the weight of authority crushed her voice. She lowered her hand, staring at her notepad, her heart pounding with frustration. The meeting moved on without her. More theories, more strategies, but not one addressed what she had seen. Later that night, as she checked on Emily, Alisha whispered to her again, "They don't believe me, but I won't let that stop me. I know what I saw, and I will find a way to prove it." She decided she could not remain silent any longer. The next few nights were heavy with exhaustion. Alisha finished her shifts only to return to the library in the hospital basement. searching through medical journals, case studies, and training notes. She reviewed rare conditions that could explain Emily's resistance to treatment. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, but she pressed on. She scribbled notes, compared symptoms, and cross-checked ventilator readings. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Emily was suffering from a rare form of ventilatory collapse that required a completely different treatment strategy. But Alisha faced more than medical challenges. In the hospital hallways, some of her colleagues whispered that she was wasting her time. A few mocked her determination. Even Nurse Kelly, though supportive in her heart, warned her gently. "Alisha, I know you care, but speaking against the senior doctors will only get you in trouble." "They won't listen. They never do." Alisha sighed. "Then I'll make them listen." Emily doesn't have time for my silence. Her personal life offered no comfort either. Bills piled up at home. Her apartment's heating barely worked. She missed meals to save money. Yet she kept going, carrying her struggles like armor. She remembered her mother's voice, "Never give up. Even if no one sees you, God does." Every time she looked at Emily's pale face, she felt her resolve strengthen. During her night shifts, she adjusted Emily's ventilator slightly, carefully within allowed limits, testing her theory. The readings showed small improvements, but nothing enough to convince the senior team. Still, Alisha knew she was on the right track. One evening, Richard Carter walked into the ICU. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes red with sleeplessness. He stared at his daughter, his face breaking. Alisha hesitated, but spoke softly. "She's fighting," she said. "She's not giving up." Richard barely acknowledged her, his mind lost in grief. To him, Alisha was just another nurse in the room, someone replaceable, someone ordinary. But Alisha knew she was standing at the edge of something extraordinary. The hospital entered its 5th day of crisis. Emily's condition took a sharp turn for the worse. Her blood pressure dropped suddenly, alarms blaring in the ICU. Nurses rushed in. Doctors scrambled to stabilize her. Richard Carter was ushered out of the room as his daughter's life seemed to slip away. Dr. Harris barked orders. "Increase the dosage, prepare for possible cardiac arrest." The room filled with chaos. Machines beeped furiously. Nurses moved like lightning. Alisha stood near Emily's bedside, her hands steady, but her mind racing. She knew what was happening. The standard treatments were failing because they were aimed at the wrong problem. For a terrifying moment, Emily's heart flatlined. The doctors worked furiously, applying shocks, pumping medicines into her veins. After what felt like eternity, her heart sputtered back to life, weak and irregular. The atmosphere was grim. Dr. Harris turned to Richard Carter outside the ICU, his voice heavy. "We are doing everything possible, but you should prepare for the worst." Richard's face crumbled. He grabbed the doctor by the collar, his voice breaking. "No, you cannot let her die. She is all I have." Alisha stood nearby, hearing every word. Her chest tightened with both empathy and urgency. She could not stay silent any longer. She stepped forward. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "please listen. I think I know what's happening to your daughter. The doctors are treating her as if it's a common respiratory failure, but I believe it's a rare ventilatory collapse. I've studied the readings. I've seen this pattern before. If we adjust her treatment to match that, she has a chance." Dr. Harris scoffed. "This is nonsense. Nurse Moore is not qualified to make such claims. She doesn't understand the complexity of this case." Richard glared at him, then turned to Alisha. For the first time, he truly looked at her. Her eyes were not filled with arrogance or desperation, but with steady conviction. "What are you saying, exactly?" he asked. Alisha took a breath. "I am saying we are losing her because we are treating the wrong problem. I have a plan, but I need your permission to try." The room fell silent. Everyone stared. Dr. Harris shook his head in disbelief. Richard Carter's face twisted with conflict. Trust the experienced doctors, or the quiet nurse who had been ignored until now? His daughter's life balanced on the edge of that decision. Finally, he whispered, "Do it." Dr. Harris protested, but Richard cut him off with a roar. "Do it. She's my daughter. If you won't listen to her, then I will." Alicia's heart pounded. For the first time, she was no longer invisible. The responsibility of a life rested in her hands, and she was ready. Alisha stood at Emily's bedside, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared her plan. The room was tense, filled with skepticism. Dr. Harris and the other doctors stood back, their arms folded, waiting to watch her fail. Richard Carter hovered like a storm cloud, torn between hope and fear. Alisha adjusted the ventilator settings with precision, focusing on Emily's unique breathing pattern. She explained calmly, though her voice wavered at first. "Emily's lungs are not responding to the normal pressure. We have to lower the ventilator's force and instead provide microbursts that mimic natural breathing. Along with that, there's a medication protocol that helps stabilize rare ventilatory collapse," Dr. Harris muttered. "This is reckless." But Richard silenced him. "Let her work." Alisha continued, drawing from her sleepless nights of research. She requested a rarely used medication from the pharmacy, carefully measured the dosage, and administered it with steady hands. Every movement she made carried not only medical knowledge but also faith. Faith in herself. Faith in the patient before her. For hours, she monitored Emily's responses. She noted the smallest changes, adjusting treatments carefully. Junior nurses, uncertain but inspired, followed her lead. The senior doctors remained distant, unwilling to admit they might be wrong. As dawn approached, Emily's oxygen levels showed slight improvement. It wasn't much, but it was something. Richard noticed it. His eyes widened. "Is it working?" Alisha answered softly, "It's a start. But we're not out of danger yet. This is going to be a long fight." The hospital grew quiet as midnight fell. The other doctors retreated to rest, still unconvinced by Alicia's approach. The ICU lights glowed dimly, casting long shadows on the walls. Only the beeping machines and the soft hum of the ventilator broke the silence. Alisha remained by Emily's side, her eyes fixed on the monitors. Her body ached from exhaustion, but she refused to leave. She whispered encouragement to Emily, her words gentle yet determined. "You're not alone. Keep fighting. I know you can hear me." At 2 a.m., Emily's heart rate spiked dangerously. The alarms screamed. A junior nurse panicked, but Alicia's calm voice cut through the chaos. "Stay with me. Prepare the stabilizer. Adjust the settings by 1 point." Together, they pulled her back from the brink. At 4 a.m., her oxygen levels dipped suddenly. Alicia's hands moved with precision, adjusting the ventilator again. Her mind sharp despite the fog of fatigue. Sweat dripped down her forehead, but she didn't stop. Richard Carter, unable to sleep, returned quietly and stood in the doorway. He watched Alisha battle hour after hour, refusing to give up. Her dedication humbled him. She wasn't working for money, or recognition, or glory. She was working because she cared. At one point, Richard whispered, almost to himself, "You're doing what an army of doctors could not." Alisha didn't look up. "I'm just doing what's right." As the night dragged on, Alisha felt the weight of her entire life pressing on her shoulders. All the time she had been ignored, dismissed. Treated as invisible, they burned inside her, but not as bitterness. They burned as fuel. She would not let this young woman die. Not tonight. When dawn broke, Emily's readings were still fragile, but far better than the night before. The hospital staff who arrived in the morning were stunned to see her alive, stabilized by the nurse they had once overlooked. Days turned into a tense week. Alisha continued her treatment plan, sleeping only in stolen minutes, eating quickly between checks, her entire being devoted to Emily's survival. Slowly, almost unbelievably, Emily's condition began to change. Her lungs responded better each day. Her oxygen levels held steady. Her heart regained rhythm. The girl everyone had given up on was showing signs of life again. On the 9th day, while Alisha was adjusting her foredrip, Emily's fingers twitched. Alisha froze, her heart leaping. She leaned closer. "Emily, can you hear me?" The fingers twitched again, then curled slightly, as if answering. Tears filled Alicia's eyes. She rushed to alert the doctors. Even the skeptical Dr. Harris could not deny the progress. The staff gathered as Emily's eyelids fluttered weakly, then slowly opened. Richard Carter dropped to his knees beside the bed, his face buried in his hands as tears streamed down. His daughter was alive. Emily's voice was faint, but it broke the silence. "Dad," Richard sobbed openly, clutching her hand. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. You're going to be okay." Everyone in the room stared at Alisha, the nurse who had done the impossible. The miracle had happened through her hands, through her persistence, through her refusal to give up. For the first time in her life, Alisha felt the full weight of being seen. The news spread across the hospital like wildfire. The wealthy millionaire's daughter, once believed beyond saving, was alive thanks to the quiet black nurse no one had listened to. The senior doctors who had dismissed her now struggled with guilt. Dr. Harris, though too proud to admit it fully, acknowledged grudgingly, "It seems Nurse Moore's instincts were correct." Richard Carter was not so restrained. He publicly praised Alisha, thanking her in front of the entire medical staff. "You saved my daughter when no one else could. You saw what others refused to see. I owe you a debt I can never repay." The hospital administration organized a small ceremony to recognize her. For once, the applause was for her. For once, her name echoed proudly in the halls. But Alisha remained humble. She stood before them, her voice calm. "I didn't do this for recognition. I did this because every life deserves a chance, no matter what people believe. I only hope this reminds us that sometimes answers come from the most unexpected places." Emily, still recovering, smiled at her with gratitude that words could not capture. For Alisha, the recognition was more than applause. It was proof that her invisibility had been broken, that her light had finally been seen. Weeks later, Emily walked slowly but steadily down the hospital corridor, her father at her side. The sunlight from the windows lit her pale but smiling face. She stopped at the nurse's station, where Alisha was updating charts. "Hi," Emily said softly. "I wanted to thank you for everything. I wouldn't be here if not for you." Alisha smiled warmly. "You did the hardest part. You fought your way back." Richard Carter stepped forward. His usual commanding tone was softened, almost humble. "Miss Moore, I owe you my daughter's life. I want to do more than say thank you. I want to help you the way you helped us." Alisha frowned slightly. "That's not necessary. I was just doing my job." Richard shook his head firmly. "No, you went far beyond your job. You saw what others missed. You saved her when even the best experts failed. That deserves more than words." He handed her an envelope. Inside was not just a generous financial reward, but also a scholarship fund in her name, a full sponsorship for her to advance her career and become a specialist doctor if she wished. Alisha's eyes filled with tears. For years, she had struggled in silence, ignored and invisible. Now, she stood recognized not only with applause, but with an opportunity to grow, to step fully into the light she had carried all along. Emily hugged her gently. "You'll always be part of my family now." Alisha looked at them both, her heart full. This wasn't about money or titles. It was about respect. About finally being seen for who she truly was. As she walked away from the hospital that evening, the city lights glimmered around her. She thought of her mother's words, "Do not let them crush your light." Alisha smiled. Her light had not been crushed. It had saved a life. And in doing so, it had finally been seen by the world. Moral lesson of the story is that true worth is not measured by titles, wealth, or power. It is measured by courage, compassion, and persistence. The quietest voices can carry the loudest truths if only the world chooses to listen. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.